Hey, Soul Stories fam. We're about to begin a brand new love journey. Please comment on where you're watching from so we can see that our Soul Stories family is all around the world. Florence, the city of light, of art, of symphonies trembling softly in the night wind, and the bells of Santa Maria del Fiore. A place where everything seems to possess its own beauty, except for the silence blanketing the penthouse on the 27th floor of the Palazzo Vecchio residences. In that stillness, Isabella Moretti sat alone. A glass of red wine rested quietly in her hand, the golden glow of the crystal chandelier glinting against the silk of her dress, as soft as skin, as fragile as the emotions slowly draining from her heart. 3 years ago, she had believed that marrying Leonardo Devereux was a gift from destiny. He, the man with eyes like molten steel, cold and alluring all at once. The French CEO admired across the European architecture world. He had swept into her life like a luxurious storm, promises, roses, midnight flights from Paris, just to kiss her goodbye before heading back into a morning meeting. But now the apartment, once full of perfume and laughter, held only the tick of a clock and the faint sound of her breathing. Isabella tilted her glass slightly, listening to the wine brush against the crystal. A small sound, yet in this empty room, it rang like a sad note. Outside, the city still blazed with light red-tiled rooftops, cobblestone streets, crowds buzzing in Piazza della Repubblica. Florence was heartbreakingly beautiful, yet she felt trapped inside it like a perfect painting hung on the wrong wall. Leonardo! Her voice was as light as breath, dissolving into the air. No answer. Only the wind rattles against the glass panes. He had once promised she would never feel alone, and he had kept that promise in the cruelest way. Present in the house, but absent from everything else. She rose and walked to the window. The glass was cool beneath her skin as she pressed her forehead to it. Far off, the Ponte Vecchio reflected golden light onto the Arno, a shimmering ribbon of memories drifting out of reach. She remembered their first time here together, when he had chuckled as she teased, "If you're going to conquer the whole world, you should at least conquer dinner with me." Back then, he still knew how to laugh. Back then, they still touched without needing a reason. Now, 3 years later, she had everything and she had lost everything. Gala nights, holidays on the Côte d'Azur, flawless spreads in Maison Elegance. But the one thing she no longer had was his gaze. She turned, the light casting exhaustion across her face. In the mirror, a 29-year-old woman stared back, brown eyes that once made strangers stop in the street, now dulled with a faint sadness. Her long black hair tied neatly back, bare shoulders carrying a hint of lavender, the scent he once said smelled like summer in Provence. Isabella smiled faintly. He didn't remember that scent anymore. She whispered as if afraid to hear herself, "We live together, but we no longer touch." The words fell into the air, warm as a confession. Yes, she still loved him, even though every day she told herself she didn't. Even though every time he passed through the living room with his phone pressed to his ear, his shirt impeccable, and his eyes sliding over her as if she were a piece of furniture. In that moment, she realized she had become one of the things he designed, beautiful, balanced, but without a soul. She went to the small desk by the window, where a half-finished sketch still lay, a design for a private client in Milan. She touched the pencil lightly, a wan smile flickering on her lips. Once he had said, "I love your hands because they can turn feelings into shapes." Now he only loved the contracts. The soft hiss of the electronic door sounded in the hall, the sign he had returned. Isabella's heart beat faster. 3 years, and still she reacted like the 26-year-old girl she had been, her stomach fluttering at the sound of his footsteps. Then she heard his voice on the phone. "Oui, Pierre, I've reviewed the design." "No, don't change the light perimeter. See you tomorrow morning." His voice cold, decisive, full of authority. No greeting, no glance. She quietly returned to the sofa and lifted her glass again. This time the wine tasted bitter, perhaps because it mixed with the thin thread of tears at the corner of her eye. Leonardo passed by, placing a file on the table, then paused. "You're still up?" His tone had the politeness of a business inquiry, as if speaking to a secretary. "No, I'm waiting for you." He nodded slightly, answering only, I have some things to handle. The office door closed. A small sound, but it felt like the final period of the evening. Isabella sat still. On the wall, the antique clock struck 9. Everything was perfect, the light, the sound, the taste of the wine, the space except for one thing. Her heart had been silent for too long. Outside, the church bells rang 10 times. In the darkness, she whispered like a curse carried by the wind. If you can no longer see me, then I will make all of Florence see. The words were not a challenge, but an awakening. That night, in the city of art and memory, something inside Isabella Moretti stirred awake the part that had once burned, once dreamed, once believed she deserved to be loved, not displayed. Florence was more radiant than usual that afternoon. The sun spilled through the olive branches, casting a soft golden light over the red rooftops of the ancient city. Inside the penthouse overlooking the Arno River, the faint scent of amber perfume mingled with slow piano music, drifting from a small speaker, the sound Isabella played, only to fill the silence within her heart. On the white marble table lay an invitation to the Devereux Renaissance Gala, perfectly aligned, embossed with silver letters, an evening to celebrate the rebirth of beauty. Isabella smiled faintly at the line. How ironic, she thought. Rebirth, the one thing her marriage had been missing. In the bedroom, Isabella Moretti stood before the mirror. The woman in the reflection, 29, tall, slender, porcelain-skinned, eyes the deep shade of chestnut, was still beautiful. Yet something vital was missing. She wore a floor-length beige gown, high neckline, long sleeves, no bare skin flawless by Leonardo's standards. A model of what he called elegance, modesty, the Devereux aesthetic. She applied a touch of nude lipstick, pinned her hair into a neat bun, and looked again. Every detail was perfect, yet there was no light in her eyes. A woman of form, without a soul. Isabella tilted her head slightly, studying her reflection. The woman staring back was not the one who had once captivated Leonardo. The woman who laughed at the gallery opening, glass of wine in hand, teasing, "If you design everything to control it, then who designs your feelings?" He had fallen silent that night, then kissed her in front of everyone. That first kiss had made her believe she would be the exception in his carefully constructed world. Now she realized she had become just another piece of that design, perfectly controlled, suffocatingly flawless. The door opened. Leonardo appeared, dressed in a perfectly tailored black suit and a charcoal tie. The familiar scent of cedar wood and musk followed him in. He paused for a moment, his gaze sliding over her before looking away. "Are you ready?" he asked, his tone smooth, precise, the same cadence he used with his investors. "Almost," Isabella replied calmly. He nodded. "Good. The press will be there tonight. We need to maintain a consistent image. You know what I expect? Simple, modest, nothing that draws attention." It sounded less like a husband's request and more like an instruction manual. When he left the room, the air cooled in his wake. Isabella stood motionless, eyes fixed on the door as it closed. Then slowly she turned back to the mirror. The woman before her looked perfect and lifeless. A quiet voice whispered in her mind, "This is who he wants, but not who you are." She took a deep breath, fingers brushing the buttons at her collar. It was a small motion, yet it changed everything. One by one, she unfastened them. The soft fabric slid from her shoulders, falling soundlessly to the floor like a cocoon peeling away. In the wooden wardrobe beside her hung a short black silk dress, the one she had worn during their first holiday at Lake Como. That night, Leonardo couldn't take his eyes off her. He had whispered against her ear, voice rough with awe, "If heaven exists, you're its definition." She had never worn it again, maybe because she was afraid he'd no longer see her the same way. Afraid to reveal the woman she once was, afraid that what had been passion might now be only memory. She sat on the edge of the bed, holding the dark silk in her hands, smooth as water, cool against her palms. The last rays of the sun spilled through the window, painting a thin line of gold across her bare skin. And in that light, she finally saw herself again, the real woman, not the display piece. Not the perfect wife, but the one who had once made him catch his breath with a single look. A small smile curved her lips. "You want something safe, but I was once fire." She rose, letting every trace of hesitation fall away. The black silk slid down her skin like a kiss from the past, smooth, cool, clinging to every curve. The hem brushed her thighs. The open back revealed the elegant line of her shoulder blades, faintly scented with lavender. Her hair fell in loose, natural waves, soft curls grazing her neck. She replaced her nude lipstick with a deep wine red, rich, alluring, a perfect blend of sweetness and danger. As her lips touched the color, Isabella felt as though she were kissing the version of herself she had lost. She put on her old teardrop earrings, slipped into black heels, and took a step back. In the mirror, the woman looking back was utterly transformed. No longer Mrs. Devereaux, just Isabella, radiant, alive, dangerously elegant. Her gaze met her own in the glass, and for the first time in a long time, a spark flickered to life. The door swung open. Leonardo entered again, perhaps to ask about the charity files. But when he stopped, every word died on his tongue. The golden light caught on her skin, on the delicate silver chain around her neck, on her wine-colored lips, the shade he once loved. He froze, his breath changed rhythm. Isabella lifted her eyes, voice soft, teasing. "Do you think this is too much for the gala?" Her tone was gentle, yet it carried a quiet challenge. Leonardo swallowed. "It's not your usual style." "Maybe," she smiled, "because this is who I really am." He said nothing. His eyes lingered at her throat, at the edge of the silk, shifting with each breath. Silence pressed between them, thick and electric. The sound of their hearts seemed to sink slow, uneven, then faster, the unspoken rhythm of something awakening. Leonardo cleared his throat and turned away abruptly, as if afraid to lose control. "We'll be late if we don't leave now," he said, voice lower than usual. "I'm ready." She picked up her small clutch and walked past him. The blend of lavender and amber brushed the air. He didn't turn, but in the mirror his reflection watched, her eyes no longer cold. Isabella stopped by the elevator, glancing at her reflection in the steel panel. In it stood a woman Florence could no longer ignore. A woman who had stopped trying to fit into someone else's design and had finally started fitting into her own. A quiet smile played at her lips as she whispered to herself, "Tonight, if anyone needs to learn how to look again, it'll be you, Leonardo Devereaux." The elevator doors closed, and the piano music swelled deep, warm, like the heartbeat of a woman slowly coming back to life. Light from the crystal chandelier scattered across the wooden floor, spilling warm gold over Isabella's bare feet. She had just sprayed a touch of perfume on her wrists, amber and orange blossom laced with sandalwood, a scent both sweet and sharp, mirroring the duality in her heart tonight. Then came the sound of footsteps. The door opened. Leonardo Devereaux stopped at the threshold, a folder still in his hand. His gaze collided with her, an unplanned impact that shifted the entire atmosphere of the room. Isabella stood beside the table, her back turned to him. The light slid down the smooth line of her spine before settling on the silk that hugged her hips. She turned. Time seemed to slow. For several seconds, Leonardo said nothing. His eyes, sharp, heavy, disoriented, moved slowly from her collarbone to her shoulder, then down to her wine-red lips, still slightly dry from lipstick. "You," he swallowed, "you're planning to wear that?" His voice was low, rough, caught somewhere between control and the loss of it. Isabella lifted her head. Her deep brown eyes met his squarely. She didn't flinch. She didn't yield. "No," she said softly, her voice calm but firm. "I'm planning to be myself." Silence. The answer was simple, yet it cracked the stillness open. Leonardo kept looking at her. For the first time in a long while, his gaze wasn't that of a man assessing, but of a man remembering what it meant to feel alive. For the first time, he couldn't find words. There was no rule book for this, no strategy for a heartbeat gone wild. He could only hear his own pulse, fast, uneven, clashing with the calm he wore like armor. She, the woman he thought he knew, suddenly felt unfamiliar, dangerous, and devastatingly real. "You've changed your style," he murmured finally, his tone low, as if trying to contain the heat behind his words. Isabella smiled faintly and turned to pick up her clutch. "No, I just stopped trying to fit into your idea of me." He frowned slightly but said nothing. As she walked past him, her scent lavender and amber brushed against him, pulling something buried deep under his ribs. It was the same scent that used to linger on his hands after the nights in Lake Como, when he couldn't stop touching her skin. Now even that faint trace was enough to make him want to hold her again. Outside, the black Bentley gleamed beneath the soft light of the street lamps. The driver opened the door. The cool evening air of Florence spilled in, carrying a breath of the Arno and distant laughter from the piazza. Leonardo walked ahead, but when Isabella followed, he instinctively turned back. She placed her hand on his arm for balance as she stepped down. Her skin warm, smooth, made him pause for just a moment. The door closed. The car began to glide along cobblestone streets. The reflections of the golden streetlights rippled across the river, flickering through the glass like flames dancing in the dark. Isabella sat by the window, gazing outside. A soft breeze from the vent tousled a few curls that fell against her bare shoulder. Leonardo glanced at her through the reflection. The black silk dress clung perfectly sensual, not loud, daring, but elegant. It made his chest tighten in ways he hadn't felt for years. He didn't know whether he wanted to shield her from every other gaze or pull her closer, just to prove she still belonged to him. The feeling was both familiar and foreign, part desire, part fear. He clenched his hand slightly, forcing his composure. "Florence looks beautiful tonight," she said, her voice soft, still turned toward the window.